The Hamburg Temple was the synagogue of the Jewish Reform movement in Hamburg from 1818 to 1938. It was the first Reform synagogue in Germany. On the 18th of October 1818 the temple was inaugurated and later twice moved to new edifices in 1844 and 1931, respectively. History of the temple and its congregation. The New Israelite Temple Society was founded on the 11th of December 1817 and 65 heads of families joined the new congregation. One of the pioneers of the synagogue reform was Israel Jacobson. In 1810 he had founded a prayer house adjacent to the modern school he ran in Ziesen. On the 18th of October 1818, the anniversary of the Battle of Nations near Leipzig, the members of the New Israelite Temple Society inaugurated the first synagogue in a rented building in the courtyard between Ersterbrunnenstrasse and Alter Steinweg in Hamburg's Neustadt quarter. Dr. Eduard Klee together with Dr. Gotthold Salomon were the first spiritual leaders of the Hamburg Temple in 1818. The first members included the notary Mayor Israel Breslau, Lazarus Gumpel and Reuben Daniel Warburg. Later members included Salomon Heiner and Dr. Gabriel Rieser, who was chairman of the New Israelite Temple Society from 1840 to 1843. The new prayer book employed in the temple was the first comprehensive reform liturgy ever composed. It omitted or changed several of the formulas anticipating a return to Zion and restoration of the sacrificial cult in the Jerusalem temple. These changes, expressing the earliest tenet of the nascent reform movement, universalized messianism, evoked a thunderous denunciation from rabbis across Europe, who condemned the builders of the new synagogue as heretics. The religious service of the Hamburg Temple was disseminated at the 1820 Leipzig Trade Fair, where Jewish businessmen from German states, many other European countries, and the United States met. As a consequence, several Reform communities, including New York and Baltimore, adopted the Hamburg Temple's prayer book, which was read from left to right, as in the Christian world. The members, mostly Ashkenazim, strived to form an independent Jewish congregation besides Hamburg's two other established Jewish statutory corporations, the Sephardic Heilige Gemeinde Sephardim Beth Israel and the Ashkenazi Deutsch Israelitische Gemeinde zu Hamburg. However, in 1819 the Senate of Hamburg, then the government of a sovereign independent city-state, declared it would not recognize an eventual Reform congregation. Therefore the New Israelite Temple Society remained a civic association and its members stayed enrolled with the DIG, since one could only quit the DIG by joining another religious corporation. Religionism was still illegal not in Hamburg at the time, with the temple in the Ersterbrunnenstrasse growing too small in the late 1820s. Its members applied to build a bigger synagogue. The Senate denied the application for a bigger temple in a prominent location, as intended, since this would incite a controversy within the DIG, with the other Ashkenazi faithful also demanding a more visible synagogue. In 1835 the society started another attempt applying for a building license, but in 1836 Hamburg's building authority recommended to withhold the application until the Senate would have decided the request of Hamburg's jury for their emancipation, issued in 1834. In 1835 the Senate had decided against the Jewish emancipation for the time being, but had founded a commission to further investigate the question. In 1840 then the New Israelite Temple Society insisted to get a building license. This time then Hamburg's Ashkenazi chief Rabbi Isaac Bernays intervened at the Senate in order to make it deny the application. However, the Senate granted the license on the 20th of April 1841 and the cornerstone was laid on the 18th of October 1842. Several sites in the Pulstrasse had been bought, thus to allow building the new temple with a wide forecourt in the courtyard. However, not unlike the original intention, visible from public streets. Johann Heinrich Klees Walben was commissioned to design the plans for the new temple. The old temple was profaned. The lawyer and notary Gabriel Rieser enforced that the land was registered on the name of the New Israelite Temple Society. Till then the Senate would register property of Jewish Civic Association only under names of a natural person, temple and congregation since the opening of its second venue. The New Temple Society invited the Hamburg-born Felix Mendelssohn Bartholdy to set Psalm Chapter 100 to music for a choir for playing it at the inauguration of the new temple on the 5th of September 1844. However, disputes on which translation should be used, Luther's, as preferred by the Calvinist Mendelssohn Bartholdy, or that of his Jewish grandfather Moses Mendelssohn, as preferred by the Society, prevented the realization of that project, as can be read from the correspondence between the composer and Maimon Frankel, the priests of the Society. Psalm Chapter 100 was then most likely sung the traditional Ashkenazi way on entering the Sefer Torah to the new synagogue. Presumably Mendelssohn Bartholdy then provided his versions of the Psalms 24 and 25 for the inauguration. On the 1st of February 1865 a new law abolished the compulsion for Jews to enroll with one of Hamburg's two statutory Jewish congregations, so the members of the New Israelite Temple Society were free to found their own Jewish congregation. The fact that its members were no longer compelled to associate with the Ashkenazi Dig meant that it could possibly fall apart. In order to prevent this and to reconstitute the Dig as a religious body with voluntary membership in a liberal civic state, the Dig held general elections among its full-aged male members, to form a college of 15 representatives who would further negotiate the future constitution of the Dig. The liberal faction gained 9, the Orthodox faction 6 seats. After lengthy negotiations, the representatives enacted the statutes of the Dig on the 3rd of November 1867. The new constitution provided for tolerance among the Dig members as to matters of the cult and religious tradition. This unique model, thus called Hamburg system, established a two-tiered organization of the Dig with the College of Representatives and the umbrella administration in charge of matters of general Ashkenazi interest, such as cemetery, tzedakah for the poor, hospital and representation of the Ashkenazi towards the outside. The second tier formed the so-called Kultusverband, associations independent in religious and financial matters by their own elected boards and membership dues, but within the Dig, took care of religious affairs. Each member of the Dig, but also any non-associated Jew, was entitled to also join a worship association, but did not have to. So since 1868 the Reform movement formed within the Dig a Kultusverband, the Reform Jewish Israelitische Tempelverband. The other worship associations were the Orthodox Deutsche Israelitische Synagogue and Verband and the 1892 founded but only 1923 recognized conservative Verein der Neuen Dammte Synagoge. The worship associations had agreed that all services commonly provided, such as burials, Brit Milah, tzedakah for the poor, almshouses, hospital care and food offered in these institutions had to fulfill Orthodox requirements. In 1879, Rabbi Max Sanger asked Moritz Henle to come to the Hamburg Temple and Henle decided to accept the offer. He immediately began his work in Hamburg by forming a mixed choir. One member of the mixed choir was Caroline Franziska Herschel, a relative of Moses Mendelssohn. They married in 1882, and from that date on his wife accompanied Henley during his performances as well as during official functions. In 1883, David Leimdorfer became rabbi at the temple, where he was also principal of the school for religion as all other rabbis. He died in 1922. The influence of the temple movement was not restricted to the liberal community. One of the lasting effects has been the introduction of the sermon in German, also within the Orthodox community. Today, Reform Judaism, with its origins in the Hamburg Temple, has circa 2 million members just in the United States. Third venue, Temple in the Oberstrasse, with the moving of many members of the Israelite Temple Association into new quarters outside the old city center, especially into the Grindel neighborhood. They wished the temple closer to the new domiciles. First, demands for a relocation appeared in 1908. In 1924 the moving was decided but delayed due to financial constraints. In 1927 decided a plot on Oberstrasse 120 was bought in 1928. After an architectural competition in 1929, the architects Felix Ascher and Robert Friedman were commissioned. The new synagogue, Temple Oberstrasse, was built from 1930 to 1931 in modern style for about 560,000 marks. On the 30th of August 1931 the new temple in the Oberstrasse was inaugurated, and it was a great time with the Rabbi Bruno Italiana. The temple in the Poolstrasse was profaned in 1931 and sold 6 years later. In 1937 the Israelite Temple Association celebrated a series of festivities for the 120th Jubilee of the Hamburg Temple. Many of its members celebrated the Passover Seder together in the synagogue, and lectures and a great party were held in the temple and its adjacent premises. The former temple in the Oberstrasse since 1938. After the November pogrom in 1938, the Nazis closed the temple, which had not been burnt but realized vandalism of its interior. Italiana emigrated to the United Kingdom. On the 28th of November 1940, the legal successor of the DIG, the Jewish Religious Association, was forced to sell the building for the ridiculous sum of 120,000 marks to the Colonial Office, which, however, did not realize its plans for the rebuild for its purposes. While the profane temple in the Poolstrasse was destroyed in the bombing of Hamburg in 1944, the temple and its adjacent community center in the Oberstrasse remained intact and were rented to the bombed-out editorial department of the newspaper Hamburger Fremdenblatt in August 1943. The ruin of the former Poolstrasse temple is preserved until today. In 1946 the city-state rented out the former temple building in the Oberstrasse to the British-founded Northwest German Broadcasting, which acquired the building in 1948. Meanwhile, the 1945 founded Jewish community of Hamburg, holding legal succession of the Jewish Religious Association in Hamburg, applied for the rescission of the enforced sale of the temple in 1940. So with the pending restitution of the temple, the NWDR asked the Jewish community for its permission before it installed a ceiling in order to separate the synagogue hall into two halls, a broadcasting hall above and a radio drama studio below. In 1952 the court restituted the temple to the Jewish Trust Corporation, who then sold it to the NWDR in 1953, whose legal successor North German Broadcasting owns it until today. Since 1982, the former temple is a listed building. On 6 March 2000, the NDR renamed its studio within the former temple, called a Times Studio 10 Große Sendersaal, as Rolf Lieberman's studio, in honor of the homonymous composer, who led the NDR music department between 1957 and 1959. It is used as a venue for concerts, lectures and other artistic performances. Rabbis and Chazanim of the Hamburg Temple. Temple rabbis were Eduard Klee, Gotthold Salomon, Naphtali Frankfurter, Hermann Jonas, Max Sanger, David Leimdorfer, Cecil Seligman, Paul Rieger, Jacob Sondling, Shlomo Ralph, and Bruno Italiana. Temple Chazanim were David Meldeler, Joseph Pisa, Ignaz Mandel, Moritz Henley, and Leon Kornitzer.